Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning.
Happy Friday. Glad to have you here.
It's Friday. Do you remember when you were a teenager and how like the whole, I actually as a young adult too, Friday was like a huge freaking deal because everyone was, wanting to cut out early or whatever. And I know in the Buy Here Pay Here world, Friday is just another work day. It's not like the leading up, the weekend doesn't really happen until Saturday for a lot of the dealers out there. But Friday's just like, you remember TGIF, all of that. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I haven't charted in a while. Like, I don't know how much dealers do business on Friday relative to other days of the week.
It's a huge collections day.
Well, but that's not what it used to be. Like, so many of the payments come in electronically. It just it affects the bank account, but we don't see traffic into the dealership necessarily on Fridays. But to quickly to that point, I think both of the dealers that we invited today cannot be here. We've got Jack sales manager. Jack Carter's sales manager. Matthew Thomas is with us. And so we'll introduce him just in a moment.
And it was something that it was this morning. It's like, I have had this happen or I've had this happen. And that's, which is interesting. Dealers lead really, really busy lives.
They do.
Yeah.
And this, with Ysmael, I can say for those who, Ysmael had something come up that is not serious, he said, but urgent. So he's everything's fine, but he just couldn't be here. So he's it's for those who were looking forward to seeing Ysmael.
But as we were talking to our guest and we'll get him introduced. His name is Matthew, and he is Jack Carter's sales manager. We were chatting with him just before we got started and about some of the different things. And he is really going to be able to answer the questions around Jack's dealership and if he can't, then we can always get, the information. But I think for the most part, the conversations can be pretty rich.
And I told Jackie, but I said, I think today's conversation is really more about the questions than the answers.
Yes.
In other words, instead of drilling in and getting specific about closing ratios today, I feel like today is going to be the first of a ongoing conversation, because as I shared with you, it's like when I look at this industry and I look at, all the dots that a dealer would have to connect together to really assess their operation and figure out which of these levers do I turn to improve my business? Then I think they're good on the inventory side. The deal structure and sales side, the actual closing, they can do okay. Collections, they can track for the most part. There's some challenges over there too, but it's really this piece. It's the lead generation and the underwriting to close the leads and the opportunities that we get from my perspective, this is a piece it's easier to measure than it once was. We have better CRMs and better technology. We can measure better what's happening. But when I see it, I just see such a low closing ratio across this industry. And I just think it's, so first we have to just figure out what is the number and how are we tracking it?
Yeah.
So we'll get to
okay.
that.
So I'm going to bring Matthew in and good morning, or it's still morning out there, right?
Yeah. Close enough. Yeah, no, it's
almost lunchtime.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much for being willing to join us, and we're grateful that Jack has someone that he just really believes can speak to this topic that he could bring.
I'll do my best. I joked beforehand that I was the discount Jack, like the Jack you buy off the team. So, but I'll do my best to answer your questions. I came into this industry a little less than 6 years ago. I came from the signing graphic industry. I used to put wraps on cars, design stuff like that. So really came in with no idea, started as a salesman and have built up from there. So hopefully my understanding is enough because it's all from the School of Hard Knocks.
So have you been the sales manager this whole time?
Really effective in that role probably the last 2.5 years.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
So may I start with just because this is kind of like foundational to some of the things that we're going to be talking about, I believe. You were there pre-COVID.
Yes.
And so hopefully you remember, because I primed you for this question before we got on, because it's like, I know for me, it takes me a minute sometimes to access old files, quite a while. But do you see just from your perspective, not the CRM, not the closing ratio, but we're talking about the customer. Do you see any shifts in the customer's mentality from pre-COVID to now?
That's a really great question. Um, I'd have to say yeah, and it's had to. I think because of what the dealership was like before and what it is now, and really tied to how much cars cost and how much it takes into it. So, pre-COVID, when I first started here, that was July of 2019. The most expensive car we had up front was $5,000. Our ACV was probably under $2,000, right? Somebody would roll in with some pay stubs that looked half right. They'd put $1,000 down and they were rolling on a 24-month contract. It was just so much different. And then as the units got so much more expensive and the money was crazy because, paying $10,000, $12,000 at auction for a Honda, crazy stuff like that. But you had to have inventory. The underwriting had to get so much tighter. Everything had to make more sense. And the expectation from the customer, they still sometimes come in and they have that $500 down mentality, and I'm going to do that. And it's a little bit of a shift. Like our older customers, they come in and they're like, you've changed completely. You have an application. There's underwriting. What does that mean? It's kind of blown them. So, but we're starting now. I'm seeing that shift. People come in, they know they're going to need $1, $2, $3,000. We're seeing that for sure. It is nice that the cars are starting to go back down, and
Yes.
they've been going back down. And it's been normalizing, but it'll never be like it was.
Yeah. So do you feel like they shop more than they used to?
Yes.
And why do you suppose they shop more than they used to? Is it because of the cost of car?
No, it's the same reason any of us do. We're trying to get the best deal we can.
Yeah, but before COVID, it seemed like the attitude with dealers was they don't have a choice. They're coming here. They're leaving with a car.
This is true. And I think some of them, go to the 20 groups, and they still kind of have a little bit of that attitude. They're with us for a reason. But at the same time, there's other people out there doing it, and you have to stand out a little bit to catch them now.
Exactly. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I'm done.
that's the part. No, that's good. I think that the part when we think about and keep in mind, I'm a guy who was in the new car business as a salesperson and then a sales manager in the middle to late 90s, then stepped into the buy here, pay here space in the late 90s as a manager. I've done coaching all over the country, and I meet a lot of dealers, and we work with this stuff, and we get pretty deep in the weeds with some of these dealers, like in terms of what their numbers look like and what they're spending and their dollars per car sold and dollars per lead and a lot of that stuff. And what I'm seeing is that there does seem to, kind of to Michelle's point, is there does seem to be a shift in the way the consumer buys. I think most of the stuff we see across the country outside of buy here, pay here, it's a shifting world. People can bring the world to their sofa with their phone, right? And so that's shifted a little bit. And so the way people buy, and the younger generation, I feel like, does have a different attitude about buying and shopping.
And I would it's kind of to go back to this pre-COVID, post-COVID customer, is that during COVID, it's like there were a lot of people that were from our segment that all of a sudden, just like there were different mentalities that were adopted about I matter, I have a choice, and feeling like they have a lot more ability to shop, and the rising costs of but I just my perspective is that there's been a shift in the dealership, and they have to close down on certain things. The underwriting has changed a lot for a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that the consumer, because of this, and also because that we had kids during the COVID stuff that had a very different paradigm they were living in during COVID than they lived outside of COVID. And it shifted how they think about a lot of things. And so where I'm coming from is I think that there was a shift in both the consumer and the dealer during that time, which, that's
Yeah,
my
well, there's
premise.
certainly a shift on the dealer side from the
Mhm.
pure mathematics. Like the
Mhm.
car is more expensive, and that's pretty much true everywhere. There's still some dealers out there that have a $5,000 to $8,000 selling price on their lot, but those are few and far between. I think the customer shops differently. So
Mhm.
so I think, Matthew, I know you guys are in a pretty well populated area. You're not
Mhm.
far out of Atlanta. You've got pretty good population base in your area. And one of the things that Michelle alluded to before we started was that Jack had shared on social media some months ago that you guys had shifted your strategy, and we're no longer engaging outside marketing folks to drive your leads. And so I want to hear from you, kind of as somebody who lived through that, sat in that chair. What did you experience as that shifted? Did your closing numbers, your sales numbers go down, or how did you shift your strategy?
So I think you'll be surprised. We were big vendors like CarMax and CarGurus and Auto Trader. Putting all the feelers and stuff out there, and we're sitting there looking at the money, and we're watching the leads come in Neo and the kind of conversations that we were having. And what we found is we were wasting money talking to people who they weren't our customer. Those a lot of those people outside of that, they don't care about a 2012 Toyota Camry. That's not, it just wasn't our person. So, we cut a lot of that. We focused on our Google stuff. We focused on Facebook. We focused on a little bit more of a local approach, and I honestly didn't see that much of a change, except for the fact that I got less what I considered leads that weren't worth my salesman's time. These people. I got rid of a lot of tire kickers. I got a lot of people who are just trying to buy whatever, and we weren't it, because we do a really good job of making sure we put a mechanically sound car out front. We distinguish ourselves in that we've got a 24-month, 24,000-mile warranty that comes with the car, things like that. But cosmetically, we're going to let a bumper scrape go. We're going to let maybe a torn center armrest or something like that go. We're not going to mess with that. And those aren't the people that you get from that. But the people who we really need to help, the people who need a car, they're fine. That they want the Toyota that's going to get them to work.
Yeah.
And they're cool. Okay, it's got a little scrape on the bumper. I'm going to put 4 more when I drive it tomorrow.
Right.
It's fine. It's absolutely okay. Oh, the TPMS light's on. Cool. Are the tire pressures good? And they ride. That's the people who need transportation is who we're trying to help.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you guys basically kind of recalibrated your approach to kind of in marketing. You hear the expression that we're changing from a shotgun wide approach to more of a rifle and precision sort of approach. And so you shifted kind of the customer that you're trying to reach, that is kind of reaching your ideal customer. And so I don't know if you have, and just generally speaking, like what closing percentages might have looked like before. You had a bunch of tire kicker leads that didn't close. And so I wonder if you have kind of a feel for what that shifted. We don't need hard numbers.
Right. No joke. Before, we were seeing like 1,600 leads pour in a month, which is a lot. It's a ton. After we cut that, our leads dropped back into 700, 800, 900 a month, depending.
Okay.
And I just didn't see a big change in what we did. This dealership does anywhere between 90 and 110 we're hybrid, so cash, outside financing with a focus on buy here, pay here. I think the meeting last that I had, my marketing lady was telling me that she felt our rate was like 21 or 22%, but I feel like it's lower. I bet it's 15 or under 10. It's probably the realistic number of how many we get. Some of that I wonder is it a symptom of how tight we are on our underwriting too. We're very selective of who we sell a car to. Because we have to be. We maintain our own portfolio. We don't sell our paper. And there's a lot of things that we do. With I've over the last few years since COVID, with people leaving out with crazy balances that they'll never pay, and break even times just ridiculously high. I've pushed that we're getting a higher down payment on the front end. Our customers are breaking even so much sooner in the cars than they were like down to 12 months instead of 20 something.
Good.
And maybe a little bit higher monthly payment, but for us, recovering more on our collateral,
Yeah.
which is super important.
I want to ask you, because you threw out some numbers that I'm just like, okay, because even though I'm not a spreadsheet nerd, I like to dabble in, like, how does that work? So you were saying that, from your efforts before, you were getting around 1,600 leads a month. You cut these ones out. And then now you're getting between 700 and 900 a month, and you're still selling the same amount. And so I'm like saying your 10% plus is it from just those numbers spot on. You're basically, your ad spend right now has decreased drastically, and your closing rate has increased. Percentage wise to what you guys were, getting thrown before. So it sounds to me like you're getting better qualified leads than you were before, like you said. And that in itself is, Jim can speak to what we're seeing with a lot of dealers and their closing rates. 10% is good.
Oh, I'll take it.
Really good.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I talked to a dealer just this week who was, lamenting about the fact that their closing ratio was, below what he was used to. Keep in mind, this is a guy who most of his career was in the franchise sector. Now they're fully invested. After selling off a franchise thing, they're fully invested in the buy here, pay here space. And he's now roughly 3 years in. And he's just saying our closing ratios are, he said, we call the leads, we text them, we do all the stuff. And we just still, I looked at his numbers and he was around 4% of all leads that they're closing through 2024. And that's actually higher than some of the other dealers that we work with.
That's right on with your previous amount of leads coming in.
Yeah.
Is 4%. Yeah.
So it's like when I look at that, I think, okay, so what is the disconnect? Like, how can we begin to analyze? And you guys are doing this all the time. And we just think we want to kind of back up and take a wide look and look at the industry overall and see what we can figure out here that helps dealers sort this out. And that's why I said today, Matthew, I said to Jack by text this morning, today's really more about questions and answers. It's like, how do we figure out the pieces that are missing? How do we, first of all, for us, that's better understanding the consumer. Like, we want to go directly to the consumer and survey them and find out what their motivations are in buying. And back to the tire kicker thing, because we hear, you probably see it on social media, people, dealers in particular, complain about bad leads or junk leads. Okay. So I would break those up into, we see some dealers that get what you might think of as a fake lead, like somebody's deploying some sort of bots and they're hitting the link and they're becoming some sort of a pseudo lead. It's not really a car buyer. So you would obviously toss those out. And then you've got mismatched leads, ones that you're talking about that's not the qualification level of the customer that you're trying to serve, at least in the buy here, pay here sector. And so we're just trying to analyze that and figure out, okay, but if I am, so let's first ask, like, what is your definition of a lead? When you tell me you have 700 or 800 leads, like what qualifies as a lead for you guys?
For me, it's if they try to contact us. I mean, if somebody's taking the time to get on our website or respond to an ad, they're on their phone, they click, they put their name and their phone number in. That's someone who's trying to contact us, maybe trying to do business. Even further, I tell my guys, you get somebody in and they've done an application, they've taken 15 minutes, 20 minutes out of their time. You need to talk to that person. Right. And I don't know what other guys are seeing. I think, salesmen today, they just want to text, they want to be passive. And I'm like, get on the phone.
I wanted to ask your lead flow. What happens when a lead gets dropped? What do you guys do? So I'm sorry for interrupting you, but that you're about ready to get into that.
Let me guide you a little bit through our funnel. All the leads come into Neo, and I have pretty much what is a hybrid. I've got an outside person who does. She's like BDC, begins the conversation, but she's also qualifying at the same time. She's verifying, she's gathering steps. And what she does is she gets a customer who all of the steps are in, verifiable application, a good idea of who they are. And then that viable lead gets handed to a salesman to continue to cultivate, right? The salesman gets that, and then it's the salesman's job to try to get the good down payment out of this person, find the vehicle they qualify for, and to do all that. So just to give you an idea, that's kind of how our funnel works. Once they get somebody in, they come to me. I try to put my stamp on every deal and make sure it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So that's kind of how ours works.
Does your BDC hand off to a salesperson through an appointment, or just like, I've cultivated this lead to this point, and now it's time for you to continue that process, or is it an appointment?
Appointment is like ideal, but I think the way things work today, and you're talking about consumer mindset, and I blame it on Amazon and I blame it on DoorDash. Everybody wants to do it on their phone and not talk to anybody. You get your groceries delivered and not have to talk to a soul. So we appointment, right? And you love it too. You're like, I want to order a pizza, and I don't want them to. I don't want them to know it's me that's ordering that meal. God, it's just me. But no,
it's like, sorry, we digress, but it's true.
Yeah. No. So an appointment is ideal. Absolutely, you want to get people through the door, but we hand off a little bit sooner than that. We just go ahead and make them part of the conversation, get them talking to the salesman as soon as possible. Because another part of that is what I'm seeing is people want to know. They want to know before they come. They don't want to waste their time.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste their time. If somebody comes through, like they're part of our funnel, and my lady in the BDC sees it and she starts looking at them and she goes, this person's not going to qualify. What do we do? And I say, we just go ahead and tell them thanks, give them the option to buy cash or maybe an outside lender if it looks like they can. Well, otherwise, let's move on to the customer we can't help. I just don't want to waste people's time, because that wastes my time.
Yeah,
I like that, and that's actually, we work with different dealers that we don't want to get them to that point of closing before they actually are invited in, because all of the down payments and everything should be negotiated in house, and it's just like that creates people do want to know, and I believe that is DoorDash and all of that. All of these things are part of what happened during COVID. It shifted how people consume drastically. And that's I like that it's like you have a BDC and it hands over. The salespeople are the ones responsible for talking about a down.
Yes. We don't give them any expectations. People call on the phone and they're like, I see you got that Cadillac. How much is the down payment on it? And as soon as you tell them the number, you're done. You've completely undercut your salesman's ability to gather potentially more money on that car. And generate, extra cash flow for the dealer. We tell our guys, we sell 90 cars a month. If you get $20 extra on each deal, that's a lot of money just with little effort. Think of how much you could get, and that improves, everybody's life here.
Nice. So thinking about let me take you back. This is before you were doing vinyl graphics on cars, and this is going back to when I was having 20 group.
I gave him a lot more notice, just
so,
for a couple of years, but okay.
Yeah. So when I think about back to 20 group meetings when I was a dealer in the 2000s, and then even before that, just meeting dealers, one of the things that you would hear, because you just touched on this thing about customers want to know what dealers used to say a lot. We never really proved this one way or the other, but they would say that a customer that you tell them you're approved. Yes, we will do your $1,000 down and $600 a month, or whatever. The numbers weren't that big back in those days, but the idea is we tell them, yeah, you're approved. You can buy a car, and then they wouldn't show up. It's like, okay, so there would be a percentage of those that we would lose, and the attitude of a lot of dealers was, once I tell them they're approved, then I tend to not hear from them. They just go shopping. Well, if I'm approvable, then maybe I can buy a car, anywhere, and then we lose them. So you guys are not having that experience. You're finding that the customer wants to know, and once you get there, you still lose some, I'm sure, but you're seeing that it works better for you, right?
I don't think it happens necessarily like that. I mean, I'm not seeing it. What I'm seeing is once we tell some, hey, look, you can buy this car and this is what you need down. They're like, when can I come?
Yeah.
There are certainly some that shop. On that side, I've seen where I've approved somebody, talk to them, they don't like their numbers. I'm going to go somewhere else, and I see them again in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They've a lot of times they go out, and maybe we're the guy that's going to help them, and no one else will. I don't know. I can't always rely on that, because there's always someone out there that's going to.
Do you ask them?
What's that?
Do you ask them?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Elaborate. I'm interested.
It's a lot in, are you surveying your customers that have bought? And are you surveying potentially those that didn't? And you're going to get a lot less people from those that didn't than those that bought. But those that bought, and you start asking the questions, because you're only working on assumptions until you start measuring why. And so, but I really appreciate you seem to have a very level head about this is what I've seen. This is and not being influenced by old paradigms, old ways of thinking, all of that. But I would suggest that you figure out some way of surveying your customers that buy and ask them questions about what led them to you or back to you.
Okay, they've actually touched on that in some of our 20 groups. That's not the first time I've heard that. And you're right.
Yeah.
And we have in the past. I've got one salesman out there. He's like, "What's holding you back?" He always asks him, "What's holding you back?"
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to hear, but we don't have a way of recording that like we should. So
yeah. And I would say it's worthwhile. You'll have lower percentages, but I think if you can survey both the customers who bought and some of the customers that you missed, and just get a feel for what happened, if they didn't choose you, why'd you miss them, that would all be good information. But I think we definitely believe in, and part of this is kind of this whole conversation, Matthew, is all meant to kind of move past opinions, like, people. And so for us, it's trying to start to drill into data and surveys and analysis and figure out, let's not guess at what the customer's thinking about why they didn't buy. I'll give you a quick example. We're working with a dealer. We've been working with them for some time. They're spending a good amount of money monthly for a small market, small dealership. I say small, they're kind of like you guys on the periphery of a major city. But so they can reach as many people as they want to reach in their Facebook radius, but they spend a good amount of money for a dealer their size. They have a dedicated BDC, and their closing ratio almost never tops 3%. And it's like, there's a disconnect there somewhere that we want to begin to continue to figure out, because the thing is, we know underwriting, you can adjust. There are a lot of leads that come through the funnel that didn't quite have enough down payment, and we didn't bring a deal together. So we know we could adjust underwriting and the math there and pick up some more. We don't ever ask dealers to drastically shift their underwriting, but the question becomes, I worked with a sales manager years ago. Michelle's heard me talk about this thing years ago. He said, the customer who's calling you on the phone at the dealership, they're not looking to buy a ham sandwich. They're in for
especially
a car,
if they do an application, they're not looking to buy a ham sandwich.
Yeah. No. And so it helped. When I first got in the car business, I worked at a dealership that was really slow, and all we did was train. We practiced training to each other, right? We're role playing and training, because there were just hardly any customers. But I learned a lot, and I can say that a lot of those fundamental things that we learned back then still apply. And I think this idea, when I think, because my definition of leads is the same as what you described earlier. They click on the link, that they're scrolling, they got a lot of stuff. They stopped and clicked on a link that tells me they have some need for an automobile at some point in their reasonably near future. That's why they clicked the link. And so to me, that's a car buyer who's at a certain stage of their car buying process, but they are in the market to buy a car, not a ham sandwich. And so it just, why 3%? Like, that just doesn't feel right.
Well, and it's a lot of your dealers, and you've talked about this lead conversion is, 5% is big.
Sure.
For a lot of them. It's and that just seems, I remember when you were telling me about this a couple of days ago, I was like, that seems incredibly low.
Yeah.
And it's it just seems incredibly low. I just want to say though that, it's what we're looking at is not, you should stop doing this, or you should stop doing that, or you should stop using this service, or you should stop using that service, but trying to get to the real conversation about, all right, so, but I mean, you did say that what worked for you was to get rid of some of the shotgun approach type services and get to something that's more focused to your customer and, people in your community and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not talking about everyone should go out and cut this service. But what we're asking is, what are your closing rates? This is something that a dealer has done that has helped them.
And I would say the part that we might be skipping over is that when you say it helped them, if they spend less dollars and they are able to create, although fewer leads, the same amount of sales, what that tells me is one of the things we gained in that is efficiency with our sales team.
Oh,
They're
gosh.
not as tied up
Yeah.
working leads
Or your BDC.
that are, end up being dead leads. So yeah, BDC too, or we're just not working. We're not as tied up in working leads that aren't buyers for us. And so I think there's different elements that we have to consider here. But I think when I look at the thing, I'm just trying to figure out, and today can be the first of many conversations. I'd love to have you back and we can kind of, drill a little deeper each time into some of these things, because we really just want to understand for dealers to be able to make some adjustments on this. And I think you guys are a good example of, because you do enough volume for your samples to be more meaningful and you have a good CRM where you can track it, that I think there's going to be lessons that can be learned and all that as we move forward. Because what it tells me is the message that you're putting out there is working. And we see your Facebook page, so we kind of get an idea of the feel and the theme of what's happening over there. And so I can see why people respond and react, and you guys look like a fun place to do business.
Can I say just a couple things from what I've seen? And I'm someone that does like the marketing side kind of thing, is you are relatable and you are fun and you talk to people like they're standing right in front of you. And it's not just, here's the thing with the car and the miles and all of that, but it's just like, hey, this is something Jack, we don't see you an awful lot on social media. Some of the stuff Jack is out there doing a lot of that. And Jack is a very well-respected dealer within our community, a very well-respected dealer.
I'm proud to work for him.
Yeah. I mean, and he's like stepped into helping on a leadership level, and he's very active in like the success group and all of that, answering questions that people are, well, here's what we've done and da da da. So he's really, really respected. And I would say his approach to doing those kind of like walk around a car and talk about the things and being personal and being relatable and being liked in that way is gold in this industry.
And I would take one step further. I think what you didn't speak to was that what I see in the messaging that you guys have, and when I say messaging, it's not all marketing. Some of it's just organic, just you get to know us and this is who we are and this is what's happening at the dealership today, right? So what I see in that is a couple things. There's a thread of being genuine, which I think consumers want to do business with somebody they feel like is being on the level. And then you emphasized the 24-month warranty, which says to me, you're trying to be that dealer who you want the customer to have a good experience, right? And so I think that's a part of the messaging that we don't want to lose. That's significant.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, the car doesn't matter. This is a people business.
I love this.
No, we are human beings serving other human beings. I mean, and in this industry, there's so many bad actors, right? And to stand out and try to be honest with people. I love going out and doing like a rough trade video and being like, this thing's a pile of crap, and just, someone comes in a lot and be like, I wouldn't buy that. And, you sell it to them anyway, but just being honest to them about what's going on and being a person to another person trying to help.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's important, Michelle, because as we start to talk about marketing, we introduce, I think one of the things that we're losing as dealers, and I look at it overall, is that piece you just talked about. It's the human element and the connection. Yes, you're right. People don't want to connect. They want to leave the DoorDash at the door. That's kind of the new thing. Just, you could do what I do. I just say it's for my wife. It's,
she's eating 3 cheeseburgers.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah. No, I just think we recognize that that's part of a shift, but these are still human beings. Even if they're just on their sofa with their phone, they're still human beings that are going to make a decision that is driven by some emotion. And then there's a fear factor for this customer. They're afraid of stepping into a business relationship with somebody who's not solid like you guys are, and so that's where we recognize there's a reservation on the part of the consumer. So we just as an industry, we're going to do better to drill down and figure those things out, figure out how to better connect with this consumer. And I think when we think about closing ratios, I think that's part of what I would be having. Of course, the business model and the deal structure and all that has to fit a certain percentage of the customers who are your target customers. So that's kind of given. But then as far as getting them to return our phone call and agree to do business with us, that starts to step into this human connection side. And why would they call us instead of somebody else?
Go
ahead.
I would love to have you come back and talk about how you train your salespeople to get that $3,000 deposit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lots of yelling.
Yeah.
that's not known, liked, and
Yeah.
trusted.
Or you could
But I mean, it's like, how does that conversation, how have you trained your people to have that conversation, to go from, more down payment is going to do this for you, and that getting people to shift into, that I'm going to find a way to do this. So that's a topic I'd love to come back and have you talk about.
Yeah.
Absolutely love to speak about it. Absolutely.
Good. That'll be fun. I think one other tip I could give to dealers, there was a dealership in Oklahoma City years ago. You can go out there. We did a story about it one time on our podcast, but they used to have tire shredders at the exit, so you couldn't leave without permission. So that's one way.
He's actually talked about them on a YouTube. I think that you talked about that dealership like 2 years ago.
On our earlier podcast.
Yeah. And it's so funny because that's one of the ones that has a lot of viewership. And actually, I think that one of their kids or grandkids actually made a comment on that in YouTube. It's hilarious. I mean, they would line people up and give them B shots.
Yeah.
It's like, we're in for a big day, guys.
Yeah. This is a dealership that had 80 salespeople on their team. So this kind of, at least on a Saturday.
They were loaded for bear.
Yeah, they were loaded for bear. Yeah. It's just like, whoa, this is the era of the circus tent.
It was
car sales.
A lot of craziness. So anyway, there's some fun stories around.
All righty.
But yeah, I think I love what you guys are doing, Matthew. We obviously have a ton of respect for Jack and watch what you guys do. Feel like you're doing it right. And so we're glad to have some time with you. We look forward to having you come back and talk some more about this same conversation and see what more we can learn next time.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it, and hopefully I was adequate. Like I said, I'm no Jack Carter, but I do my best.
No,
for discount Jack Carter, you did phenomenally. Hey, Matthew, would you hold, if you have a minute, just stay back until after we've closed out the podcast, and then we can say a proper goodbye and then kind of talk about next steps, maybe. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Great conversation. I love conversations like this.
Well, I like when we can get inside the kind of the important stuff that, a lot of what we're talking about here doesn't show up on anybody's composite report. You can't run a report in your software, any software that's going to tell you the things that we're talking about here. So I think it's important for us to keep on that thread.
And I would say, like, just the threads, as I'm listening to a lot of this, there's in the White Hat Way talks about becoming known, liked, and trusted in your community, and different ways to be able to do that.
Right.
And so a lot of the things that we've always considered Jack a pretty white hat dealer, because he really does care about, becoming relatable and, being trusted in his community.
It's about customer success. We either care about the success of the customer or we don't. And so this is kind of the separator. Everything we see says Jack does care.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Happy Friday. We will see you on Wednesday. And I know we have, it's Allison, isn't it?
Next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.